We are on.
Yo, we're here.
We're here.
We're here.
Gosh, I just wanted to say, thank you so much for being here. I'm so excited. Just seeing your church move. And the first time I met you, we'll get into that. But, man, I just know God has anointed you, and your hand is over everything you're on.
Come on. This is already the most encouraging podcast I've ever been on.
Come on.
Oh, we're going to keep going.
Can we just do it for like 2 hours?
We're just getting started. We're just getting started.
And thank you for that. I'm honored to be here. I'm glad that you guys are in our space, in our home.
Beautiful, by the way.
I'm excited for this.
Yeah, I think so we do this every episode. We have a bunch of people send in their questions.
Yeah.
Fake people. They're not
Sure.
real.
Yeah,
They're
yeah,
not
yeah.
real.
The people.
But the people are wanting to know.
The fans.
Are you pro-Trump?
He hit it with it.
Oh, the people.
All right. Hey, be careful now.
Yeah.
The people are watching. I'm just kidding.
No, don't go into it.
Great
We're
question.
good.
No.
Every time
But-
I jokingly ask that to Ricky and Darius, and they're like, well, this is why I believe what I believe. I'm like, dude.
That is a great icebreaker.
Yeah.
Do the fans have a name? Like, is it like the Sinners Nation now?
Save sinners. Hey, the sinners nation.
Are we just the sinners?
No, definitely not.
Definitely save sinners.
Bro, we should call it the SSI crew.
The SSI crew.
Oh, wait, why is the I coming?
What's the I?
I don't know. SSP.
Sinners. It's got to be something with
Save
sinners.
sinners. Save sinners.
Save sinners.
Yeah. Well, yeah, the Sinnies.
SS.
The
S
Sinnies.
squared.
SS.
We got to find the name for our tribe.
Yeah, we got to figure
Because I can't be like, I'm a sinner. You know, like
Yeah.
you can't. But I want to be in it. But
Right.
names matter. Names matter.
We deconstruct our whole name.
That's
that.
hilarious.
I love that.
All right. I have a real actual question. So, what is your main non-spiritual goal for 2025?
Ooh.
My main non-spiritual. I mean, are you saying like non-church? Because I'm like now I'm really
just
working
maybe
on.
like physical or something
Yes.
else. You're
No,
like,
I got you.
something else you're like
I got
wanting
you.
to do.
I want to be able to drop my my mile like
A mile time.
my mile time.
Are you a runner?
I try to be.
Me too, brother. Me too.
I'm speaking it into existence. I do miles like it takes me a while.
What does that mean? Like 12 minutes? 13?
I'm at like 12. I ain't gonna lie. I'm at like 11.
I want to say
I'm
it's like
running multiple
13.
miles.
Oh, that's not bad.
13.
Okay.
What do you know what your time is on a treadmill, or are you just going out? Like, you know what setting? You
No,
put
it's
it
on my phone. So
okay.
but no, not on the treadmill.
Yeah.
I can't run on a treadmill that well.
Dude.
I like to be out there in the wild with the people.
Yeah.
So, Ricky, you're that way, right? That's what you're
Yeah.
saying. Ricky's gonna run the half in June.
Oh, there you go. Rock and roll.
We're all running the half.
Let's go.
Honestly,
my best
running.
friend's flying out here from DC to run the half.
Oh, wait, the rock and roll one you said?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's fun.
Running is honestly, I'd say, like, as much as it is like physical and mental, it's also like so spiritual too.
Yeah.
It's like I'm running and I'm like, I need extra power.
You're like,
You know?
No, I'm not gonna lie. That's true.
Really?
I pray often. I'm like, God, I think I'm gonna faint right now.
Like, what are you guys running away from? You're just like,
Yeah.
Sin.
That's
It-
sin.
Yeah,
Save
I
sinners.
was-
That's why we're doing this.
Save sinners. There you go.
Yeah, I was asked to go on a date, and like he's like, "Oh, do you want to run 10 miles?" I was like, "No."
A running date?
Yes.
That's wild.
yes.
That's a red flag, though, by the
I
way.
feel like you
it?
could do
Is
that,
it?
though.
Yeah, like let's get
That's a
together
huge
and
red
like
flag.
let me see if I can take you like that. That's wild.
That's great. You know what? That is a great point. I'm never going on a
I
running
feel
date.
like you could go out right now and run 10 miles though.
I probably could, but it wouldn't be at a good pace.
10 miles. I've never been able to run 10 miles.
Longest I've ever gone is 6. I ran 5 last Saturday.
Oh, that's great.
Okay.
But I didn't think I was gonna make it. I was praying for strength.
You're praying for
There you
strength.
go.
Yeah.
There you go.
That's hard.
My goal is I want to get really tan this summer.
Oh, good.
I want to be a skinny queen and I want to be tan.
Yeah, I feel like
What
you
about
don't.
fake tan though? Have you ever done it?
I haven't. My wife does that though. Oh,
Don't lie. You steal her
Ooh.
stuff. I've seen you one day.
I've never done
You
the
should do a
tanning
spray
bed.
tan just to see what it looks like.
I should. I just want to be that guy that like walks in the room and people know that my tan's fake.
There you go.
I
know,
feel
they're
like, I
like,
feel like you
that's
can't
a-
This
even
dude's
tan.
weirdly bronzed.
Yeah.
He's honey glazed.
But you got to own it. It's about how
Honey
you walk it,
glazed.
though. It's how you
Really?
rock it.
Yeah, like just.
I don't think you'll ever
confidence.
get there. Like,
Yeah,
you get red.
I get so red.
You get red, right? I don't think you can get tan.
No, I
Like,
can
not
get tan.
naturally.
I can
Can
get
you?
tan. Yeah.
Oh, I can get tan. He's-
I will
Prove
look like
it.
you by the end of the summer. I'm claiming it now.
All right, we'll see. We'll replay this like in August and see
I'm
if
just
we made
so
Yeah,
pale
for
and
sure.
red.
See, let's see if Hayden met his goals.
it. Yeah.
He's so skinny.
Oh, don't worry. We
He's
go get your mile time
he's
too.
lighter. He's lighter somehow.
He looks skinny.
He looks skinny.
All right, let's
so
get
funny.
it.
Y'all ready?
Yeah, let's start
Let's
it.
do it. Let's do it.
Awesome. Well, yo, welcome to the Saved Sinners podcast. Clap, golf clap, golf clap, golf clap, golf clap, clap. We have this man is an amazing preacher, an amazing communicator. I think it's safe to say you're probably world renowned. I think that's safe to say. He is an amazing father, an amazing husband, and he is the head pastor of local church
Come on
in
now.
downtown San Diego. Everybody in the room, let's clap it up. We have Abe Camacho
Come
with us
on.
today.
Let's hear it.
So
Let's hear it.
happy to
Abe
be here.
Camacho.
Yes.
So cool.
The Abe Camacho.
The Abe
The Abe
Camacho.
Camacho, wow.
Before we start, I want to real quick tell
Yeah.
the story of how I had lived in San Diego for 3 weeks. I didn't know anybody. And I talk about this guy often because he's one of my favorite people on the entire planet. But so I randomly end up meeting Sammy Famoso, who's like my boy. I love him so much. One of the most humble people you'll ever meet in your life. But so Sammy and I are talking. We've never met before, and we're just talking about he's the young adult pastor and youth pastor at like the El Cajon Rock campus. I don't know any of the campuses, whatever. Go to like El Cajon. We end up meeting at an In-N-Out. And we're just talking, and I'm like, so we're just talking church, and I'm like, who are some like big, like who's crushing it in this city? And your name might have been the first person he
Wow.
said. He literally, I think we were talking about like church plants and all this stuff. And he tells me about you, so I'm literally looking you up on Instagram. I had lived here for 3 weeks. You were one of the first people I knew. So I don't think we met. I don't know when you and I met. I think it was at Zoe conference last year.
Yeah.
But so it was like 3 years until I met you. But I've known and been watching your Instagram for a while.
Wow, that's so
This is
kind of
pretty
him,
sick.
and
Yeah.
that's really cool. And we
Yeah.
met in L.A.
Yeah,
That's
LA.
wild. That's so cool.
My first time I met Pastor Abe, I was at a youth camp. I was so tired that, what do you call it? Like when everyone's preaching or when we go in a room and...
Breakout?
A breakout rooms. So we were all in there. I had like 5 kids, and they were giving me a hard time. I'm like, you guys go in there. And I like go take a seat, put my glasses on, and I just like knock out. And then Pastor Abe goes, "Good morning." I'm like, "Oh, I'm up." And he just starts spitting fire. I'm like, "Oh my gosh."
Yeah, dude,
I'm
I've
awake.
heard things about
I'm
that
awake.
breakout.
But yeah, I'm so glad to have you on here.
Man, I'm so
glad
happy to be here. Thanks for having me. I'm excited.
Yeah, dude. So the way we pretty much start this every time is this podcast is based around testimony. So
Yeah.
your story, how'd you come to know Jesus? How'd you get to where you are now? And then we'll just kind of flow off of that. But we'd love to hear, like, just from the very beginning.
Wow.
Tell us how you began.
By the way, beautiful
came
church.
following Jesus.
Beautiful
Thank
church.
you.
And I was like driving here. I'm like, yo, where is this place? And they're like, we'll open the gates. I was like, oh, there's a gate. Okay. But yeah,
This church is so aesthetic.
Dude,
so
thank
aesthetic.
you.
We're like, I don't even think we need lights. Like, there's
just a
amazing
natural
We have
lighting.
no
light.
lights set up.
Okay, a little bit about my story. I come from Mexico. Grew up in Mexico. If my accent like kind of drop it a little bit, it's because like Spanish is my first language. So, I translate in my mind, but I've been here long enough.
Yeah.
I grew up in Tijuana, right across the border, in Christian home, Christian family. And when we moved over to the States, man, I just struggled with language. I struggled with finding that community because you always feel like you don't really fit in. You are too Mexican for the American, but then you try to connect with the Mexican, you're too American for the Mexicans because you're now just kind of stuck in the middle, living that immigrant life. But I grew up playing music in the church. So that was like my thing. I wanted to be like, back in the day, like Hillsong was it. So I was like, I want to be the Mexican Joe Houston. I want to be Joel. You know what I'm saying? Like, I want to be Joel. And I loved worship. And that was like my connection to church. It wasn't God. It was the performance. It was being part of churches that do have a privilege to ministry, and they forget that doing ministry is the privilege. But for whatever reason, in some churches, there's like a hierarchy of honor. And if you're on the platform, you're treated so well. So I'm talking about being in a competitive church where you only platform the best. And at 14 years old, I was a drummer and a bass player. So I I was trying to be really good. And when you play in those churches, you show up, you got a green room, you get people bringing you food and coffee. Listening and growing is optional as long as you're killing it on the stage. So I was just doing that in and out until finally, like everybody, you eventually run out of fuel. And for me, my fuel was validation for my talent, my friends, my network. But at some point, that wasn't enough, because that's not enough. And I had that come to Jesus moment. I had that come to Jesus moment when I was about like 17 years old. I made an altar call at the church where I was at. It was almost weird because for whatever reason in churches, it's almost like leaders don't really need the altar call anymore once they're on staff. But at that point, I realized, like, I know I'm here and I'm in the core, but I need this moment. I need this encounter. So from that day on, I gave my life, really rededicated my life to Jesus. And then from there, it went crazy. Being part of like that immigrant family, like work ethic is huge for us. So I was working 2 jobs. I was working at Ralph's in the morning. Then I would go to Southwestern College in the afternoon. And then I worked for a carpet cleaning company at night.
Wow, you were grinding.
So I was grinding. And then the church that I was a part of bought a building. And they're like, dude, we need a janitor. We've never needed a janitor, because it was a portable church, but now they have a building. And they're like, well, there's this kid at the church, the drummer, like he cleans carpets. So, hit him up. We don't have to pay him much, So they offered me a job as a janitor, and I took it. So I became the janitor. And I was cleaning offices. That was my job. Go to everyone's office, clean, vacuum, all of it. And there was this one girl, and she was cute. And English was a struggle for me, and she only spoke English, and I was learning it at the time. So I couldn't really speak game. So like my game was just like clean her office very well. So I
speaks volume.
I spent a little extra time on the vacuum. I just kind of like give it a little bit of an eye.
Oh.
And then when I wanted to talk, would be like, "Can I take your trash?" It was just the worst. It was the worst.
That accent too.
It was like that. It was that bad. And people at some point, I'm like, man, like that accountant girl, like she's gorgeous. And my manager says, you need to back off. That's pastor's daughter. And I'm like, it's like Aladdin, but Mexican, Aladino. I was like the guy from the street, fell in love with the princess. But we connected, and her father, my pastor at the time, basically is like my daughter can't date no janitor, so I'm gonna teach you what I know. And went from janitor, and 15 years later, I was operating as the executive pastor of the church, all the way up till 2020 when we transitioned, and local began.
Wow.
I have so
It's a lot.
I have so many
can go
I have so many thoughts.
chapters.
You want to go?
Yes.
You want to go?
No, yeah, you got it first.
Well, I just think it's crazy that you struggled with communication
Yes.
at the age. Did you say 17?
Yeah.
How old are you now?
I'm 35.
And wow, I just think that's mind blowing, because you are one of the best communicators I know.
Thank you.
In English.
Yes, thank you so
So
much.
like what, before we go to that, how did like that come about? Like how did you learn? I mean, I know we're kind of going on a rabbit trail, but I just want to
No,
hear about
I love
Like
that.
how did you master that? Because I feel like you are so, like you're beyond fluent, and you're just, your communication is dynamic.
Yeah, I can barely tell you have an accent.
Yeah,
I can
so-
tell because I'm from Chula Vista.
Yeah, there you go.
But yeah, you're amazing.
Thank you.
But yeah, so I want to hear about that. Like how did you get to this?
You know what? I would say this. I applied principles that I learned in other spots for communication. I do think that a lot of churches tend to put communication or preaching as either you have it or you don't. But in me growing up with music and worship as my discipline, I mean, when you're really trying to make it as a musician, you practice every day. Nobody told me that communicators don't practice every day. So I practice every day.
Wow.
So I started developing. I said,
gotta
well,
stay here for a
if I
minute.
practice my instrument every day, and this is what a lot of people don't understand. In my context is church. You go to church and you see a worship team, and they have amazing moments.
Yeah.
You're like, how did that happen? They prepared. So then I'm like, how am I going to create incredible moments when I communicate? Well, I got to prepare.
Yeah.
I got to practice. It's something that I continue to this day. Before I preach a message, I've preached it 3 times. Because if the first time I communicate a message is on the platform, I'm not preaching, I'm practicing.
Wow.
If you practice on the crowd, that's malpractice. I would never want any person for me to be their first round on anything. Why would I let people be my practice target? I want to bring the best and prepared.
Yeah.
So it's a whole thing on communication.
Oh, dude, well, we have to stay here for a sec. I
Yeah,
want to hear his thoughts.
I love how you incorporate, your worship into your communication skills, because it's the same thing as well. Because, I do worship, and there's been times where I'm not prepared, where I'm like, I can't even worship freely.
Yep.
And it does feel like practice. You're right. And it just so happens that when you do prepare, when you do practice day in, day out, the times where you do have an opportunity, it's not even like you're trying. It's I'm prepared, and God has shown me through preparation and errors that He does care about preparation. Yes, you're anointed. Yes, you have the gifting, but your preparation matters.
Absolutely.
Because it shows how you steward it. It shows if I can bless him with little, I can bless him with more. And I appreciate people who prepare and whatnot. And I've learned even throughout these podcasts, like me and Hayden will sometimes come on here. I mean, in the beginning, we're like, all right, did you write down questions? No, we're gonna flow. All right.
Yes.
See how it goes. It's like the
Tragic.
worst one. We're like, we gotta cut
That's why
that
we
podcast.
filmed like 20.
And then Enoch and Evan, I'm like, oh my gosh, I gotta scratch the episode.
That's great.
Yeah, no, that's so good. I love. I've heard people say like, you got to get your reps in by
Yeah.
preaching. Get your
Yes.
reps, and you'll get better. But I've also heard people say like, I don't remember who it was who I was listening to, and he was like, bro, the pulpit is not the place for you to get a rep. That's a place for you to hit you're playing the game at
Absolutely.
that point. And so like, because I preach, Darius preaches, Ricky's preaching, Lee preaches. We have
Come
a
on.
bunch of people in the room who are preachers. How, what does that practically look like? Like, what are you doing? Let's talk now, 2025. You're a freaking phenomenal communicator. What are some things you're doing? Like, before you preach on a Sunday, what is your process like? Like, what's your prep like? How are you making sure that you're ready to just let it go by the time you get up there?
I love that question, and we can get into like how we write a message and how ideas come. But I want to talk first with like the focus and the target. A lot of people don't know what the win is at preaching. The Bible says that the word never returns void. I really believe you can preach John 3:16 for the rest of your life every Sunday, and someone's life is going to be changed.
Yes.
Amen.
Because God will do what He does, which is to reach the spirit of the person. So then what is my job? My job is to create a talk that disarms the heart to the place where they can receive from God. So if God's target is the spirit, my target as a communicator is the soul. So the soul is made up of the mind, the will, and the emotions. So I'll tell you, I'm not losing. I want everyone to capture this. As a communicator, your job is not to fill, but to satisfy. We've all gotten filled up of junk food, but we've never been satisfied. Like we've all been to Taco Bell, but we've never taken a selfie at Taco Bell. Check out this spot. Absolutely not.
Yes.
But sometimes we'll go to like a very bougie sushi restaurant. We get like this little piece. We're starving after the full meal, but we took photos. We told everybody that we were there. So then our job as preachers is not just to put out so much junk, but to create a dish that is so excellent that it satisfies the soul.
Yeah.
The way we satisfy is by hitting the 3 things: the mind, the will, and the emotions. So every message, I need to target the mind. The mind means I need to have a thought that is clear. I thought that at the beginning of my message, I can say, if there's only one thing you can take away from a message, this will be it. Just because you know where you're going, it doesn't mean you get to take a shortcut. You're like, wow. And how do you get to those thoughts? You think like a genius and communicate like a fool. The target as a preacher when it comes to the mind is to have a thought that everyone can apply on Monday. But then there's the will. The will is the call to action. Every message should have something that the person who's listening is ready to do. A challenge, forgive, text this, don't do that. And then there's the emotion. I want to feel something. I can feel sad, broken, challenged, righteous anger. I can laugh. Now, here's the whole kicker of communication that whole ties in. If you don't hit all three in your message, you will fill them, but they won't be satisfied. This is why you have preachers that are brilliant, so smart, but then they're done and you're like, I didn't feel anything, and I don't know what to do. But then there are preachers that are all will. We got to change this and do something and start. But I'm like, but you didn't tell me anything, and I don't feel anything. And then there's pastors that are like hilarious. It's like I'm laughing the whole time, but I'm like, I'm not going to change my life. But when you hit all three, people will listen to you preach and be like, I don't know what it is about Hayden. He's not the best, but he's my favorite. It's because their soul, every time they receive from you, is satisfied.
Yeah. Wow. That speaks volume too. And especially the overflow as
Yes.
well. And I feel like as I've preached, minimal times at youth, I've learned a lot through what's my goal? Why am I preaching? What's my focus? And I've learned that if my focus first isn't to love the Lord, hear God with all your heart, mind, and soul, the whole thing will be messed up.
Totally.
Because we will try to do it out of our own will. And, I've gone into things just like you said. I felt like, wow, I communicated that so well. But there was no power. And so I felt that I went back and watched the videos. I said, how much time did I spend praying? How much time did I go over the scripture and really dive deep? Lord, what are you trying to tell me to tell them? Because as preachers, like we've said before, we're just the proclamation of God's voice.
Yeah.
And so if we're just putting out junk, like you said, Philip Anthony Mitchell, actually, there was this one video, and he said he went up there. He said, man, we need a new church. This place is overflowing, 6,000 people. We can't do it. People are expecting him to preach. He says, I can't preach to you today because I've made it a covenant with God saying, I'm not going to come up here with my outlines. I'm just going to preach with the word. And I was just, that said enough.
Yeah.
That said enough. But yeah, it was just, you need to have the focus and goal of not, I want to do something for God, but God, I love you so much that your overflow is going to change people's lives.
So good.
And yeah, I was just blown away.
That's amazing.
No, that's so good. I love that. I think I was watching something recently. I think it was Andy Stanley, and he was saying, like, determine your goal, and then that determines your approach.
100%.
And I think the biggest thing that I've been trying to work on as a communicator is, one, my goal being making sure Jesus is the center always. What I mean by that is before I get up there, my heart is postured to the Lord, my focus is on the Lord, and my focus is on what the Lord wants to do through me.
Yes.
And my approach is a result of that. So, like, for example, like, I feel like the things God's been speaking to me lately is, like, determining because there's just different settings you're talking in.
Yeah.
Whether it's a leadership meeting, whether you're speaking to middle and high school kids, or whether you're speaking to adults, every situation has a different, approach. And for me, with youth, one of the things I've been realizing is I'm like, I don't think I'm ever going to preach at these kids again. Like, I'm going to sit on a stool, and I'm going to have a conversation.
Yeah.
And we just did it on Wednesday. And these kids were so much more receptive to it because I'm understanding the generation, and I'm understanding that in our particular culture at the point in time that we're in right now, preaching isn't what's going to hit with them. What's going to hit with them is me having a conversation of saying, hey, this is who Jesus is and what he wants to do in your life.
Yes.
Next Tuesday, when I'm preaching to young adults, I'm preaching.
Yeah.
And I'm going in because I understand the context and the culture of what I'm walking into.
Right. So good.
So I think, like, that's been the biggest thing. And maybe if you want to speak to that a little bit of, like, when you're going into different settings, because I see you all the time, you're doing, and what you guys are building here, whether it's a vision day or a vision night, you're preaching on a Sunday, you're in 3 podcasts on a Friday, whatever it is, like, how are you determining how you want to approach?
Yeah.
Or maybe even your Spanish service.
Yeah, totally.
Like, how do those differentiate?
Yes, and it's knowing the audience, right? Yeah. Absolutely. Every time I preach to a youth, like I did this youth camp or Daybreak with Ben, every time I go up there, I make the same joke that I'm like, I'm Theo Abe, I'm Uncle Abe. I'm 35, not that old, but not that young. Married, I have 2 beautiful daughters. Yeah. So you're not going to be cooler than the cool kid in the front row. So you got to know, what is my role here? What am I supposed to do? And for me, the filter that I do is take what I do so seriously without taking myself so seriously. So when I come to a podcast like this, it's an honor, but there is a security. It begins with a security. For me, the invitation is the validation. I'm not waiting to see how I do here. I'm not waiting to see at the end of a message to see how I do, even with youth. I know, you know what? The fact that I have an opportunity is because it's God ordained, it's God assigned, and I'm going to see how I can serve and give somebody a word from God. And it is being able to not take yourself so seriously that it's like, well, I'm going to be on brand. And I'm going to preach to these youth, and we're going to have revival and encounter. And I'm going to really break down the Greek. And no. It's like I'm going to give them something that they can digest and receive in a way that it connects. At the end, you want to connect with people. On Sundays, we preach in downtown San Diego to a really cool crowd. It's like I look at our church and I look at them like, man, all those fits are fire. And then we drive all the way to East Lake, and we have a Spanish church, predominantly families. You know, I'm preaching to 45 to 55-year-olds, and you have to switch the approach, because at the end of the day, I want to be able to serve them a meal and understand that I'm not the chef, he is, but I'm just here to serve it in a way that connects with people.
So good.
Yes. I think it's amazing knowing your audience. What has been on your heart right now of the young adult generation? Because there's a movement going around. But I want to know your thoughts. Like what has been on your heart of something that God has been speaking to you about? Because do you run personally, or I know you and Lee, you run the young adult, right?
Yeah, he's starting it.
Okay.
Well, your church is
That's the thing. When you have our church is
predominantly
young
YA.
adults.
Yeah.
So all of our kids, it's like very young kids and then youth.
Yeah.
So there is no young adults at our church.
Really?
Our
That's
young
just
adults
your
are on
church.
Sundays. You know what I mean?
Wow.
Our downtown campus, it's...
So what are you seeing with that?
What am I seeing
Your
with that?
congregation.
Yeah, to answer that, I feel like what I'm not seeing is the boldness to pioneer. The boldness to pioneer. I feel like we have been, through culture, being given options to define where we land, and you got to pick a side. Are you blue or are you red? Are you this type of Christian or that type of Christian? So they spend so much energy trying to find out where they fit versus creating something that is brand new that's never been seen before. And what I'm noticing from a lot of young adults, and you'll start seeing it, they dress the same. They sound the same. They all like the same things. And it all has to do, in the big part, because we're all so connected on social media. Social media has told us this is what a young adult looks like, dresses like. This is what a young adult Christian sounds like, what they wear, what they don't wear. What I'm looking for is who is going to be that David that does not look like the rest of their brothers. Because God at that moment says, you're looking at the outward appearance, but I'm looking at the heart. So I'm really believing that in this next season, the next few years, God's not going to elevate people that look like the norm, but is really looking for people whose heart is ready to pioneer and do something different for their generation.
Gosh, that's so good. People need to hear that, because it's so easy to go with a culture that, just to stay comfortable.
Sure.
In all honesty. And the biggest thing, with social media, is just comparison. It's saying, God, you know what? You didn't make me right because I want to be like them.
Yeah.
That's what we're saying when we're comparing. Is saying, God, you messed up. In like you said, picking sides. It's so hard to live in a generation where you can't say this because it's going to offend them. You can't say that; it's going to offend them. But no, what does the Word of God say? Don't get mad at me. That's what the Word says.
Yeah.
And it just reminds me of in Matthew 19 when the Pharisees were trying to trap Jesus about divorce. He's like, oh God, what should we do in this scenario or in this scenario? And whether or not he said something, he was going to get trapped the other way. One person was going to get offended or the other. But he says, he just rewrites scripture. You know,
Yes.
The Lord made two become one.
Yes.
You know, that's what it's originally for.
Yes.
He didn't address their question. He didn't address their question. All he did was, what does the word say?
Yes. And you see that in a generation that are so familiar or over familiar with the book, but have no intimacy with the author. And the thing about over familiarity is that over familiarity makes beautiful things invisible. So what happens is when you are living in a culture where you're being promoted based on what you know, now who you know, you run the risk of saying, well,
Wow.
I don't need to spend time with the author. As long as I'm impressive, I'll get ahead.
Yeah. I just learned that new word, Gnosticism. It's
What is
based
it?
on
What is it?
Gnosticism.
Gnosticism.
It's about what you know, not who you know.
Yes.
You know, that was the biggest thing. I was reading First John, and he was just trying to fight, people who were just preaching the wrong gospel. And they were saying, no, it's about what you know. But no. He's saying, no, it's about who you know.
Yes. You can't be so, going back to the young adult thing, it's like, there is no way that we have a generation of young adults that are intimately connected to Jesus, the revolutionary of revolutionaries, the one that flips tables at the temple, the one who picks the rejects, and yet we're all aligning just to look like one another. Our call is not to look like other Christians, it's called to look like Christ. But what happens with comparison is that you become so impressed with their walk that you become ashamed of your own. But the more you spend time with Jesus, you realize, dude, I'm called to be different.
Yeah.
And you dare to step out. Local is that.
Yeah.
Local is a boutique church that if we wanted to be, name it, we should have just joined that church. If we're just going to start the next, it's not worth doing. But if you're going to create the new, then you need to do it.
Yeah, I feel like someone's always looking for the next big thing.
Yeah.
When they got a local church, not saying the local church, but
But isn't that a great name, though?
it is such a great name. It is such a great name. But when they have a church, a great church,
Yeah.
right across. Not saying that you should just pick whatever's closest to you, but pick a church, stick to it, and stop looking for the next biggest thing.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's what I was doing when in my early 20s. I was just jumping around.
Still in your
Like
early.
20s.
I was 23.
So wise now.
I was jumping around because
Yeah.
I was always looking for the next biggest thing.
Yeah.
When the Lord was like, what are you doing?
Yes.
Do you want me to use you or not?
Yes.
And my focus was in the wrong area.
Yeah, I just to jump in a little bit, I love like what we're talking about with like knowledge, because I think the thing that I've had such a simple revelation recently. A couple of us went to go see. Do you know who Bryce Crawford is?
No.
He's like this YouTuber. He's an evangelist. This kid's like 23, I think. He's
Love
from
it.
Georgia.
Amazing heart.
Amazing heart. And that's exactly what stood out to me. I saw this kid, and we're sitting in, and it's a live podcast, and I think it was a couple of us went, and I'm captivated by this kid.
Yes.
He sits on a chair, the room is full, and he's talking simply from this place of, I am so in love with Jesus that all I want is for people to know Jesus more.
Yes.
And it was like the most simplest revelation I've ever had in my life, because I'm watching this kid and I'm like, it was just bringing me back and almost convicting in a way of like, how much have I gotten caught up in knowing about the Lord instead of being with the Lord,
Yes.
or doing for God instead of doing with God.
Yes.
And I'm just sitting there looking at this kid and I'm like, man, like it was just bringing me back to that first encounter I ever had with Jesus. And it was this revelation of, I just want to lead and love and be
Yes.
from that place.
Yes.
Of, I am just in love with Jesus. And that is my motivation for everything that I do.
Yes.
And then the results of that are the fruit that God has. But I'm not going to God because, God, I need a word for this message. Or I'm not going to God because, God, I need to live by my spirit so I don't cuss somebody out today, you know what I mean? Or I'm not going to God for the things that God offers. I'm going to him because I'm just so in love with his presence. And it's such a simple thing, but that is what God has been speaking to me lately. And I just feel like, as we're talking about, boutique churches, and local church. Like I feel like I've gotten a chance to meet some of your young adult community, and Lee is so amazing, and he's the most loving guy
Yes, he is.
ever. And Lee, come here real quick.
Hey,
Come here.
let's get Lee on the pod.
Quick. Just chill. But I think Lee's a perfect representation of this.
Yes.
Lee is the illustration for this moment. No,
Yeah.
I'm kidding. Lee, come up on stage.
We're preaching. You are illustration.
Yeah. But Lee, this dude is one of the most loving people, and he is so in love with Jesus. Like your love shines through. And in return, like your leaders are that way, the people that you serve are that way. So every encounter I've had with anyone from your church is that way. They just love the Lord. And I think I think it just says a lot about your leadership and Lee's leadership. And I'm just really inspired by this church. I think this church is so creative.
Wow.
I think you say boutique. I think that's a great way to put it, because you guys do things differently, and you're creative with the way that you want to go with how you lead this movement. But so, do you have anything else you want to talk on that? Because I do want to kind of hit on creativity.
100%. Yeah, creativity has been something on my mind, actually. And I heard that it's been something on your mind, too?
I love creativity.
Yeah.
I love it in the ministry, for sure.
I mean, people forget where creativity came from.
Yes.
It came from the Lord.
Yes.
I mean, I was reading in Exodus. I was shocked. I'm doing this 90-day Bible thing. So I'm like trying to just... that's not like my time with the
We
Lord.
started it together.
We started together, and then he's
The
now
shred?
I fell off.
the shred. It is tough, but I do encourage people to do it. But I was just reading, and it's just things that I totally just missed over.
Yeah.
I was like, wait, let me go back to that. But when Moses went up, the Lord was saying, I'm going to give these people wisdom. I'm going to give them creativity. I'm going to give them things that are needed for them to glorify me.
Yeah.
Whatever it was, that building the tabernacle. And I was like, whoa. So people who are gifted in whatever area, creativity, artistic, whatever it is, that is from the Lord. But it's up to us on how we use that, whether we use it for our own glory, for His glory, or for just the fun of it, right? It's all from the Lord, but for it to be the most effective, we need to do it with the Lord.
Yes, that's so good. I think creativity in the church, and we can just start going there, because it's just like,
Let's do it.
It's a passion of mine. I'm like leaning in. When it comes to church, it's. I have a lot to say about this, because I'm very passionate about it. Grew up in a church, worked at a church for 15 years. And when we transitioned out and God really placed it in my wife and I's heart to launch a church, we really now realize all of these years of ministry have been school in preparation for this. And we started really getting to know our city, San Diego, our generation, millennials, and then our younger generations, Gen Z and Alpha. And we started looking at what people love and why people like to go to church. And I realized when I started asking people what they love about the church, it was all very unique. I could ask 10 people that go to the same church, could ask you guys, what do you love about the Rock? And you guys would all tell me something different. So what I realized is that there is an infinite of ways of how people connect with the church, but yet every church started to look like every other church. And I want you to picture this. When we start thinking of churches, we start thinking about stadium seating with LED lights and an LED screen, holding signs made by the same company that have the same thing in the front, and the hospitality, it's all the same. You get greeted at the door, you get seated by an usher, and then you walk out. We launched our church in the middle of the pandemic. We started online only. We started with 7 people, and I realized even during the pandemic, it was the equalizer, because there were churches of thousands of people in attendance. And when I posted a video, we were getting, from a church of 7 people, we were getting the same amount of views as a church of thousands of people. And I realized that the metrics for success pre-COVID was how many people you could gather in a specific place. And this is what I realized. During COVID, I didn't stop going to restaurants. The way the city met our needs changed. The way the church met our needs didn't. We stayed the same. And the moment restrictions opened up, we all came back to do the same thing. Our churches in downtown San Diego, a lot of them stayed with outdoor seating. The hospitality changed, how they serve you, how you offer. And the church refused to change with the times. Now, cathedrals are proof that the next generation will always empty the buildings of the previous. You and I think that these cathedrals are museums and they're beautiful, but those were the mega churches of their time. Those churches were popping in their time. And now they're just beautiful for the gram. And I wonder if one day my kids are going to be standing in front of an LED screen and say, this is what my pops used to think was cool. But now we have an opportunity as Christians to create what's different. I believe that there's a lot of prophetic gifts, not just in what we say, but in the Bible, you think of prophets like Hosea, who God didn't just give them a word to say, but a message to embody. He became the message. And I believe that with local church, we said, well, let's be what we believe is the church of the future, and we called it Boutique Church. Our goal is not to gather as many people in the room. Our goal is to gather a community that is intimate in attendance, but there is an endless possibility for impact. So let's say this. Outreach Magazine, shout out. I come from a church where we were on fastest growing church in America, top 5 3 years in a row, number 3, 4, and 5. Fastest growing churches in America. But the same customer service that you're getting at the church, you get it at Target. But yet you go into certain boutique hotels, boutique restaurants, they make you feel seen and known. And I said, how come restaurants have better customer service than churches? How come restaurants and hotels care more about my individual need? And I said, I believe that churches should be the leaders in hospitality. Real hospitality is not a one-size-fits-all, it's a one-size-fits-one. And then we said, okay, let's endeavor to build a church that is for someone, not for everybody. Yeah. And now we're about to launch our 3rd location, 3 years in, and we realized that the more clear you get with your message, the faster it is for people to join that church.
Wow. Yeah. I feel like a lot of churches, too, they have pastors and leaders who don't care about people, that they're just there for the ministry aspect. But when it comes to an outcast, a person who needs Jesus, I've seen it with my own eyes. It's just like they'll leave them there, not even say hello or hi.
Sure.
And like you said, hospitality is so huge.
It's because that's the new luxury. So I'll tell you this, the old excellence is luxury. The new excellence is hospitality. So the old luxury was, I can afford a limo. I have my own limo. That's the old excellence. It's luxury. The new excellence is, I have Uber. And I can have a driver whenever I want. I don't need to own a car. It's when I need it, how I need it. But now with churches, it's the same. The old excellence was, I have a waterfall in my lobby. I have a lot of LEDs. I have offices. I have basketball courts. I have all of it. But the new excellence is, man, I come in and they're looking at me in the eye. And I get to shake hands with my pastor. And I get to be part of a group of people that look and sound like me. There's something, and I think that there should be a church for everybody. Not any church, it's for everybody. But when you get closer and closer and more clear about your message, what we've realized at Local is that the engagement and the connection is faster. When people come to Local in one day, they can make a decision if this church is for them or not. In some churches, when your presentation is not clear, it could take you months, years, and then you're like, I just never connected. I tell people, if you don't belong, don't belong.
Right. What do you think stems from being church hurt? Because we're talking a lot about, the good things of what makes a church good. What do you think people stem their heart or their posture? I don't really want to go to a church because I've been church hurt.
The Bible says it clear, hope deferred makes the heart sick. And I think that's the root for a lot of church hurt is that there was a lie when it came to the marketing. Because we do say, come as you are. But when they come and they don't look like the people on the platform,
Right.
when they don't look like the people that get promoted, sometimes they try to change themselves, and after months or years, they realize, like, I'm never gonna fit in here, and then they leave hurt. But the only reason why they're so disappointed is because they really believe they were appointed there. You're never hurt by something that you don't care about. You know you're going to get hit and the
that's
enemy
good.
is going to attack you. But what happens when you want a place to be home, but it doesn't want to be your home? It breaks your heart.
Wow. You don't get hurt by things you don't care about.
Mm-hmm.
That's honestly a really new perspective on, people that I've spoken to who have gotten church hurt. In my mind, they're like, oh, they don't care about the Lord, or they're trying to do their own thing. But really, it's something that they were seeking. It's just something that they felt didn't want them.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, man, that spoke in volume. Gosh, I was going to say something about, finding a church. People, because I was talking about church hopping. One of the reasons why I was church hopping is not because I didn't like the church, but because I felt like I wasn't getting fed. In that time that I was saying, oh, I'm not getting fed, I was only reading my word probably once a day out of the week. I was going to church to get fed. And I was like, man, I started to realize if I work out once a week, I'm probably not going to be as strong.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, let me try this out. Let me read my word, get connected with the church, start serving, not even worrying about the message. Yeah, obviously the message is good, but don't rely on the message. Let me go to church to serve. Don't rely on the message. Just go, see how you like it. I was like, wow, I love church. I love this church. And it wasn't because the church was the problem. It was I was going to a church to satisfy myself, my spiritual self.
Yeah.
It's one thing to hear a message and go, wow, that was a great message. Instead of, oh, I'm going to a message, come on, speak to me. I need something for this week. I haven't gotten anything all week. And I feel like as a young adult, that's the biggest problem. Is people try to find the new thing, the new church, is because they're looking for something to satisfy themselves.
That's good.
But yeah, I don't know if you've seen that in your church.
I do, and I would say this when it comes to church hopping. I think everybody needs to go try as they're searching. Not if
Yes.
they're planted.
No. Yeah. I'm not saying it's a totally bad thing.
Right. When people come and it's like the first time at local, like, oh, that's my first time, and I'm like, you know what? Churches are like cars. Go test drive a few. I have a black car. If you offered me the same car, same year, same mileage in pink, I'd be like, it's not my thing. Yeah. And you need to go and you find something that you got to put it on. I think ministry is kind of like going shopping. I'll go to the mall and I'll see the mannequins and I'm like, sometimes I don't try it on and I'm like, oh, that's a dope fit. But then I realized I don't have the mannequin's body. You know what I'm talking about? It looked way better on them. Yeah. And then I go home
You
and I'm
will,
like,
bro. Once you get that mile time
I'm
down,
working
you're
on
locked
it
in.
this year. This is the before and after photo.
The before and after. Get a good glimpse.
Physically. And I'm thinking that with people, they window shop for churches. You got to get in there. You got to try some things on. You have to go through their growth track. We call it essentials. You got to go and really figure out what it's about. It would surprise me how many people are part of churches and they don't know the pastor's wife's name. You know what I'm talking about? And they don't know the name of their executive pastor. And at some point they were there for the feeling. Because going to a church for the first time is like going on the first date. It's all feeling. It's all hype. But once you really get to know the person, once the feeling fades away, you're like, am I going to be, does it fit me and who I want to become? So yeah, go to as many churches as you want and then get planted. Once you're planted, don't be jumping around. Those who are planted flourish. But go find something that fits not who you've been, but who you want to become.
That's good.
Yeah, man, there's so much there. I think, so I want to the creativity lane.
Yeah, we're staying
because this is what gets me fired up.
Yes, let's go.
I love talking creativity, especially in the Christian space.
Yes.
Because even how you were saying like hospitality needing to be creative,
Yeah.
like doing things differently, not how you see a plug and play. I think a lot of churches right now, you just see this plug and play model that one church did, it was really successful, and now everyone looks at that
Yes.
way. That's how we're going to do it because it works, which isn't wrong.
Yeah.
It's true. But I also just think like we have a responsibility as followers of Jesus to be creative.
Yes.
Genesis 1:1, God created the heavens and the earth.
Yes.
Our Lord, who we serve, is a creator. Everything that you see was designed with intricate detail, and it was designed so intentionally. So if we believe God's word that we were created in the image of God, if we believe God's word that the Holy Spirit lives in us, I think we have to have an expectation of ourselves
Yes.
that we are called to be creative.
Yes.
And I just think like with all the churches, like I just want to hear your thoughts on this, because like with all the churches and the plug and play model, I just feel like if we were tapping into all that the Holy Spirit has for us, every church would have so much intentional creativity and design to it that I think you wouldn't have that issue of where you're going places and maybe you feel like you're not being loved on in the right way, or maybe you're going places and you're just following the plug and play model, but you're, whatever, like you were saying with the LED wall. I just want to know, like for you, what is if you're talking to somebody about creativity and like really trying to challenge someone to think outside the box, tap into the Holy Spirit, think differently about things to where we have an opportunity as Christians to stand out, because the church should be the most creative place out of anywhere. Like museums should not be the most creative.
Yeah.
It should be the church.
Yes.
And so for you, like, what do you have to like, maybe somebody who's watching, they know they're creative, but they haven't tapped into it. Or maybe you just feel like, maybe you're watching, you're like, I'm not creative. That's not true.
Yeah.
Because you're made in the image of God.
Right.
So what is your advice to like someone who's watching who's maybe in that space?
Yes. I would say a lot. Local church is most of the people, if I want to say 99.9%, has walked through our doors because of our social media. That's how Lee found us. That's how everybody found us.
Let's go, Lee.
We have not yet printed a flyer. We've never done a banner. We don't do ads. We believe that excellence is our evangelism. And excellence in creativity is so key. I was a youth pastor for so many years, and when I was a youth pastor, we would have to go to schools because that's where the students were. But now, as an adult and as a pastor, it's the same principle. It's a different approach. Where are the people? They're on their phones, and we would be kidding ourselves if we said that we don't use the filter of social media and creativity before we make decisions. We do it before we go to a restaurant. Hey, check out this restaurant. You send them a social media page. If someone said, "Hey, man, I want you to check out this restaurant," go to the social media page, and it's just horrible. It's just not excellent. It doesn't inspire trust. So with the church, creativity is something that connects us now. It's part of the fabric of our culture because it inspires trust. Excellence in creativity and innovation inspires trust and takes away distractions. So when a church is not excellent, doesn't matter how passionate you are, it will tell me a lot about the character. So it's the same thing.
That's really good.
If I get
That's
in your
really good.
car and you say you're all about excellence, but there's 3 bags of McDonald's in your back seat,
I feel attacked.
it's yeah, you can tell me all you want, but actions beat intention 100% of the time.
Yeah.
And we can say the church that we believe in a creator, but if we're not creative in how we connect with people, then we're gonna lose them.
Yeah.
Then we're gonna lose them. And we saw it. It was not forced. Honestly, with our approach to creativity, we said, let's create the church that we would want to go to. Let's create posts that we would be proud of reposting. At some point, I was part of a church where I almost felt like false advertising. We would use like stock images and videos, and then people would come to the church and be like, the people on the flyer don't look like the people in the church. Or like the advertisement looks really dope, and like the communicator is using a suit.
Yeah.
And we had to mirror the expectation and the
Yeah.
experience. Yeah.
That's so funny because when I played football, we had like these NIL, deals to promote other brands, and they were telling us, by the way, we are in downtown
Yes,
right
sir.
now, so you probably
You're
hearing
in it.
sirens. We're in it.
We're in the
We're in
city.
the, we're in the
The
city.
most beautiful city in the world.
Come
Yeah, it's the
Come
most
on.
beautiful city in the world. Gosh, what was I gonna say?
That you had some deals and
Yes.
You were flexing
And
the NIL.
I wasn't
It was
flexing.
a
No.
humble brag. It's
I didn't
all
have
good.
any. I didn't have any like great ones at all. That knew these guys are making like millions of dollars. I was never on that. Probably like $50 posts.
great. Love it.
But I was like, I'm not choosing one that I wouldn't use. And it's the same way. It's if you want to promote your church, well, do you even like your church?
Right.
And do you fit in? Are you able to use your own creativity?
Yeah.
And which I love because we're all different. If you're watching this and you're trying to fit into a spot where you might feel, this doesn't fit, the way I was made. People are trying to be a saw when they're a hammer. And I think it's great that you guys do that at local church. I think that's great that you guys don't even use flyers or.
I just think, for example, just think of everything you do in your regular life. Have you ever gone to a store to shop and they ask you, hey, is this your first time? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then if it's your first time, we're going to call you. No, you walk into stores and you're like, man, this is the vibe. And I realized, man, the restaurants, the coffee shops, the places where I live my life have a vibe. And then I realized my church feels like a time machine. It's almost like I live in 2021, but my church feels like 1992.
Yeah.
And you have to step out of your city. And I believe that church should be at the forefront of creativity.
Yeah.
So if you look around right now, you have exposed brick, you have some live plants, you have some warm lighting, you have skylights. I had a friend come in and I'm like, bro, your church just feels like Urban Outfitters. And they shop at Urban
What
Outfitters.
a great compliment.
And I shop at Urban Outfitters.
Right.
And sometimes we think the church needs to look like other churches. But really, the church should be a space where I want to bring my friends. Sometimes I bring my friends to coffee shops just because of the vibe.
Yeah.
We go to restaurants because bro, this is a dope spot. We go take photos. We do whatever. But when it comes to church, we black it out. We got to get certain lights. We charge the credit card. We try to get all this experience. But what I realized, the only people that like those churches is because they've been at churches like that.
Yeah.
When you really
Plug and play.
That's
it.
When you're trying to reach people that spend their time at the Lafayette, that spend their time at Morning Glory, they want to go to places that fit their cultural environment. So where are the churches that look like their city?
I want to hit on that because I think how you show your creativity can be some of the most effective outreach you can have.
Yes.
I was just having a conversation with a young adult who I love to death, and he's about, literally right before I got here, and he's about to open a coffee shop. And we were joking because he doesn't even like coffee. He doesn't even drink coffee.
Yeah.
And we don't know, we were talking, he's like, I don't know, how we're going to figure out, what's good and what's not, because I have no reference.
Yes.
And we were talking, we were like, well, really? The goal is just because this dude is so swaggy, and he's like, the goal is we're going to create the aesthetic to get people there, and then they'll figure out the coffee along the way.
Yes.
But the point of that being, the first thing you have to get someone in the room and to feel like you're saying comfortable with maybe their, what they're used to, their vibe, whatever, is how you're showing your creativity.
Yes.
I have just found when I am going to and visiting other churches, and I feel like they're just. And this may sound bad, but I just feel like they're so bland. It's one of the first things I'm judging.
Yeah.
Because I'm just like, man, this isn't this. I don't think this is even really glorifying.
Yes.
In my mind.
Right.
Because it's just the same thing that you see everywhere.
And I mean, people, just look at the people.
Yeah.
You can look at two people and you know who's from the East Coast and who's from the West Coast. But sometimes you go to churches, and churches in the West Coast look the same as churches in the Bible Belt and look the same as people in Australia.
Exactly.
And they're all the same.
Exactly.
But you have to understand, every city has a spirit.
Local
city,
church.
local church. Every city's got a grace. We moved to San Diego for San Diego. San Diego is the most expensive city in America right now. We pay for this. But you're forcing me that when I go to church, the place where I should feel more at home, find my community, is just going to look like everywhere else?
Yeah.
Absolutely not.
Yeah.
I do feel like sometimes, though, I mean, I have met bland people where they're like, I like this.
Yeah.
Yeah, no.
Yo, shout out to the bland people,
The bland
though.
people. They're like, it's not too flashy. It's not too this. I'm like, okay, you know, that's you. And, you know, that just goes into we're one body.
Yeah.
You know? You guys might be the hands. You know?
Yes.
We others might be the feet.
Yeah.
You know. So I do want to, you know, take them into consideration of, you know, be creative.
Yeah.
But there are people who like the simple stuff, which is
Yes.
okay because the goal is for them to get to know Jesus,
Yes.
for them to experience Jesus in their own way.
Yes.
You know.
Well, yeah, and I think you hit it. It's we're all one body. Every
That's it.
church, every local church has a grace that they have and a lane that they have.
Yes.
And so, yeah, you're 100% right. I want to hear Lee, my guy. I want to hear your perspective, bro. Like, I'm gonna hand you the mic in a sec, but like, so you were a YouTube influencer. Go
Still
check
is, still is.
Yeah. Don't check his videos. No, I'm just kidding. You moved here from. So you're actually from. We're from the same town in North Carolina. Shout out. Or my mom lived there. 336. Shout out Greensboro. And you moved to LA to be an influencer. You found yourself in San Diego. Talk about your experience, like coming to local, meeting Pastor Abe, like on the talk of creativity. Like, is that what stood out to you? Like, what? Like, I would love to hear your perspective on just like what's happening here, how you got here, and all that stuff.
I love it. We're
let's do
plugging
it.
in local. I love it.
What is up? So, I think for starters, I mean, yes, I was doing the YouTube thing. I moved out here. I partied it up with the influencers for like, I think for maybe a month and a half. And my aunt and her husband were living here. They were in the military at the time. And she was like, hey, before you sign a lease out there, you should come out here, check it out. I think you're going to love it 10 times more. I came out here and I hated it instantly because, yeah, bro, I mean, I'm going from like turning up with influencers, mansion life to like living in like a 2-bedroom apartment with 2 cats and like being by myself all the time. I hated it, and I grew up in church, quote unquote, right? Like I was going, and I stepped out when I was 14, and that's for another day. But I just remember going on TikTok, and I start typing young adult worship nights, young adult Christian groups, young adult friends, whatever, and local church popped up. And I remember one Sunday morning, I tell my aunt, I'm like, hey, I need to go to church, because if I don't know what's going to happen. Like, I need to reconnect. I need to feel something, because I'm not feeling anything. And at that point, I had already stepped back from YouTube. And so I pulled up on Sunday, and I went to local church with my camera with the intentions of vlogging and filming like this is a day in the life or whatever. And I remember walking in and feeling so intimidated that I put my camera down. But you know what? We had a leader who stepped to me as soon as I walked in. And she goes, are you here by yourself? And I'm like, yeah. And she goes, sit with me. And I go and I sit with her. Little did I know, she introduced me to our head of ministries and our senior pastor. I was coming to church for a month, before I met our young adults. And the very first person that invited me out was Pastor Abe. That same weekend, he didn't wait a week. He didn't wait whatever. That weekend, he reached out to me on Instagram, and he's like, bro, what are you doing this weekend? And I'm like, nothing. He's like, meet me here. Let's hang out. I'm thinking we're going to get into the word. This is super Christian. I walk with my Bible. This man is wearing like skinny jeans, like, bro, he was just chilling. Like, and we're at a
they're
burger
still cool.
spot, bro.
They're still cool.
They're still, bro, he was just like chilling. Like, I couldn't believe it, And then we start chatting, and we're talking about paranormal activity and just life, bro. Just life.
Yeah.
And I'm like, so no Bible, noted. Like this is the vibe, and this is what I needed.
You just need to be loved on.
I just needed to be loved, bro. All I needed was community, and that's why I made local home.
Oh, wow.
I made local home because I was seen and I was loved and I was made a priority. My pastor wasn't upstairs, just kind of chilling, letting everybody else mingle, and then just going on the platform to then run away after. Like he was in the mix. He was meeting the people. He is with the people, you know what I mean? So I think that for me that was enough for me to say local is my home and Pastor Abe is my pastor.
That's amazing.
That's
That's
awesome.
amazing.
Yeah.
I think that speaks volume. Dude, get connected. you might be scared to go to a church, check it out. Like Abe was saying, hop around, you know. But for the churches out there, like, see people, you know, because those people that you see that might not look the part could be your best leader.
Can I just say too, like, I just want to add, because I'm such a man of honor, bro. Like, and first of all, like, shout out to Pastor Abe. Like, he's dope, right? Like, we know Pastor Abe is dope. Pastor Abe is the man, bro. That's my pastor. I love him, bro. I love you, Pastor. Shout out to your team too, because your team is amazing and you guys are crushing it. But I want to speak on that topic that you just said about, like, kind of just like giving opportunity. If there's one thing that I would love somebody to know about Pastor Abe, is that he's all about creating space. For anybody that doesn't know me, if you don't know me personally, like, I have just completed my very first year of ministry. My very first year of ministry to the capacity of leading the youth here at local church. November of 2023, Pastor Abe walked up to me right downstairs and he goes, "Lee, so youth or what, bro?" And I'm like, "What do you mean?" You know?
Sounds like me.
Yeah. He goes, youth? And he just keeps going. I'm like, let's do this, you know? I remember going home and I was in my studio apartment and I cried. Because I'm like, there is no way that God brought me from being an influencer to now stepping into leading the youth at local church. And I'm like, and I, you know, in those moments, I'm like disqualifying myself, saying all these negative things. And it turned into a moment of just me like thanking God for like seeing past my flesh and knowing my heart, you know? And I remember, and I say all of this to say that Pastor Abe is all about creating space, and like, he's such a visionary that he knew so much more about where my heart was at before I knew where my heart was at.
Yeah.
And I remember when we were up here, bro, in this same room, we're literally sitting just like this, and we were launching youth, and we were creating the Instagram account, we were creating the name of everything. This is just the beginning, right? Pastor Abe looks at me, he goes, "Who are some of your favorite, like, preachers? Who do you listen to? Have you ever seen the movie Click?"
Yeah.
I've seen the movie Click, yeah.
Have you seen the movie
That
Click?
movie,
Bro.
broke my...
Yes.
Okay, hold on. So Adam Sandler looks like my dad, and I remember watching that when I was 9 and literally like crying myself to sleep.
Oh.
So thanks for bringing up that trauma.
Oh, is it? Wait, that's the movie where they rewind? They have the
Yes.
remote?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, yeah.
So bro, in that moment when he asked me who's my favorite preacher, I remember just click. I paused him. In my brain, I paused him and I stopped him and I look up to God and I'm like, okay. So I was born and raised in the Virgin Islands. I could lie to him right now, come up with a crazy name, because he probably won't know who they are. Or I could be honest and say, I don't listen to anyone. Like, I don't know anything about ministry. I don't know anything about being a pastor. I don't know anything about church. Like, what do I say? I want to lead the youth, but how do I do this? And so I just press play on the whole scene and I'm like, no one. And I look at him and I'm like, if that disqualifies me from stepping into this, like, believe me when I say it's okay. And Pastor Abe looks at me, he laughs. He does this thing, he goes, ha, ha, ha. He laughs, he looks at me, and he goes, see, there it is. And he says, you're not stepping in to lead the youth because of what you've done. You're stepping in to lead the youth because of your heart, bro, and I can't replicate that. No one can.
So good.
And for me, that was everything, bro. And that gave me enough confidence to start this journey, you know?
Yeah.
And so I just wanted to say that, like, Pastor Abe is really big on creating space.
That's so fire. Yeah, I think me and Hayden were talking about leadership, and you're not a good leader if you're not, making disciples, if you're not passing it on. So yeah, I mean, I've seen you work at hand. You're so personable, bro. So creative, and yeah, thank you for serving the Lord.
Yeah. No, I think when we're talking about being the leader of a community of people who believe in God, and the different churches and how people aren't always seen, with this being an interaction between you two where you clearly saw something in him before he saw it in himself, what, as a leader, how are you carrying yourself for that? Because I feel like the best leaders are the ones who do exactly that. Hey, you don't see anything, but I see the gold that God has placed in you. And I'm going to work alongside you as we continue to chisel and chisel and chisel and chisel. And then when you're doing your thing that I've seen since the beginning, I'm just going to be championing you along the way. Yes. That's my favorite part about ministry, and I just love hearing this. So can you just talk to us a little bit, as a leader, how are you, with this situation, you see Lee, how are you carrying yourself in that way?
That's great. That's a great question. And I think going back to creativity in what it takes, the way I approach leadership, if I could use like a metaphor, is I had a plant in my house that was dying. I moved it closer to the light and it came back to life. And there was nothing wrong with the plant. It was just the setting. And sometimes as a pastor, that's really our role. I don't think I can create a great leader. I can just allow them to be great. I believe that greatness that is within and the calling and the purpose is God-given.
Yes.
As a pastor, your responsibility is to say, Lee, got it. I see you, but you're in the kitchen, and I need you to stand by the window when there's a little bit more light. And sometimes you need to be a little bit more hidden, so I got to move them. And I got to move the next person. There's a big difference between creativity and innovation. Creativity is just God gives you the material, and you do the best you can with it. I am only going to be accountable for the resources and the people that he's given me. So I better get creative. If I cannot help a Lee flourish, why would he trust me with 10 more Lees? Never allow my ability to reach grow beyond my ability to care. So if as a pastor, I want 10 great leaders, he gave me one in Lee. So he gave me another in my general manager, and he gave me another one in our worship leader. So I got to get creative to do it. And as a church planner, scarcity is a great catalyst for creativity.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people thought that a lot of our creativity, they're like, oh my God, you're so creative. And I'm like, no, we're just broke. And we have to figure out what we can
So
with what
funny.
we have.
Yeah.
Oh, you're so
And
creative.
it's
No, we
like,
just got money.
like, oh my God, I love the exposed brick. Like, we can't paint it. No.
Don't paint it.
And it was wild. And I mean, this is one of the main reasons we got into this. We got into this space. We planted the church, 7 people. This is our first space. And it's a very expensive space. If you've ever tried to live in downtown San Diego, just imagine how much this place is.
Oh, yeah.
And we said yes, and I signed the lease when I had 7 people in our church. Because we knew, are we going to go to a school? Are we going to go to Boys and Girls Club? No. God called us to create something that stood out, that connected with the people. And I mean, now I'm glad because Lee is part of the mix. We took a risk. We started another church in Spanish. Everyone's like, dude, why are you doing it? I'm like, I just feel like that's what God's calling us to do. It takes risks. We took over a church. Now we have a church. And in that church, Lee found his girlfriend. Now, we can talk about Lee some more. But what I've realized is that you have to find the evidence of God's faithfulness in your risks. I think we live in a generation that's addicted to the confirmations. But the confirmation, in my experience, comes on the other side of obedience. Not just waiting to move. If I move, God will give me the confirmation.
Right.
Yeah.
And I feel like people are waiting for the confirmation before they even take the first step.
Oh, yeah.
They're like, God, give me a sign. And he's just saying, take the first step.
Yes.
Plan, take. I honestly, I'm not a big planner. You know, I'm sure you map this whole place out and, plan, getting your scripture to see if, okay, does this align with God's word? Is this what he's commanding me to do? And I know that sometimes we'll walk into something unsure, but it's something that God commands you to do.
Yeah.
So don't be afraid to do it because he's commanding you to do it. He's right there with you. And then the third thing was just taking the first step. And you guys took the first step.
Yeah.
And look at it now. And I am blown away.
Yes.
Blown away.
And it's a group thing. I was a creative director for our church for years. So sometimes I need the support. So I surround myself as a pastor who leads more on the creative side of things with people that are very administrative. I only asked a couple of people to join our church, and the first one was our general manager. Brilliant systems, because if it was just up to me, this church wouldn't be here. Because you're like, okay, well, we got to pay the bills and we got to have systems,
Yeah.
But I also understand that I got to stay on my lane, and I cannot be everything, but I need to be fully myself. And if what I bring is I think, in the team, sometimes they do we laugh with me because they're like, okay, Pastor, what's the plan? I'm like, I don't have the whole plan, but I know the vibes.
The vibe.
And they're like, got it. Pastor's got the vibes. It's going to happen. But it starts with that. It starts with a feeling. Starts with your friend doing the coffee shop. It's so true. A lot of us go to places just because, man, it's a gallery that fits me. And yeah, it's a whole thing.
Yeah. How much time do we have? Are we good?
You got to wrap up in a little.
Wrap up.
Yeah.
I want to hit one more thing before we wrap up. So I want to talk with you about humility because I love your story of you were at this mega church. You were traveling. You were traveling. You were doing things. You know, just with the situation there, you were just held at a higher pedigree. Then you go off. You start your own church. Most people, when they start a church, they go to an organization that helps fund them. They go to, they start raising. You decided to take a different approach, and you were working 2 jobs. Is that right?
Yeah.
So that you could pay, so that the church could basically pay itself, and you could just put everything you had into the church, and you were just grinding. And you were working at what were the 2 places you were working?
I was working for the school district. Mm-hmm. And I was working at Target.
And you were working at Target?
Yes.
You were working the night shift at Target,
Yeah,
right?
unloading semi-trucks every night.
Dude, so can we just talk about that? Because if you talk about staying low and being humble, coming from where you came from to that, and really I just think that speaks volumes to your church, saying this dude is grinding definitively, and then also doing everything he can to build this community of faith. Like, how has that shaped your leadership? How has over time you've learned to maybe walk in more humility? How did that season shape you? Let's just talk about that, because I remember the first time we met and you were telling me about that. I thought that was so cool.
Wow. Well, thank you for that. Humility is so funny because it's that thing that disappears the moment you speak on it.
Yeah.
Have you ever met that guy?
He's still humble.
Bro, I'm just so humble.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, you just lost it.
Yeah. No, I literally did that in a phone conversation 2 days ago. I was like, man, I just don't struggle with that. And then right when it left my mouth, I was like, oh my God.
Oh my gosh.
I'm so prideful.
Yes. For me, it was difficult.
Yeah.
I'm a husband, right?
Yeah.
I have bills. I have my daughters. I need to provide for them. So I knew I needed to step up as a man to provide. But also I had this burden of this calling to plant this church. And at the time, and even still, we're not part of any organizations. We don't take money from any network or anything. And God really reminded me that your calling is not something you get paid to do, it's something you would pay to do. And when I put that in context, I realized, what am I willing to sacrifice outside of my comfort? So I went to work. I went to work 2 jobs, and I was off on Sundays. Sometimes I would preach, go home, and get ready because I have to be up at 8 p.m. I have to wake up to be ready to work at Target. And it's humbling.
Exactly.
It is.
I've worked at Target before.
Absolutely.
He's like, I'm walking in the
and
humility.
you're there, and you're just like, oh my God. And then on Sundays, right? Because that's the culture we live in. You want your pastors to do all of that. But what I realized about humility, what I'm learning about humility, is that we all have a reason why we should be humble. And if we don't choose it for ourselves, God will choose it for us. And I choose to every single day just walk low and walk worthy of the call, because ministry shouldn't lead to privilege. Ministry is the privilege. And the pastors should be the chief servants, should be the ones that come in and are okay with being the ones that are putting in the work and lead by example. You will never create a culture of humility when the leadership is not humble. And the thing about church culture is that it's so honoring. So they'll put you on a pedestal and they'll try to prop you up. And at some point, can a pastor not carry his own bag or his own Bible, not put on his own coat? And those are cultural things that we've learned along the way. But what I've realized is that pride will sneak in. And it'll make you feel good, but it is a poison that if you don't refuse it after a while, you'll get lost in the sauce. And I've met so many pastors that walk around with a security detail, and I'm like, my bro, you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
And don't buy a backpack.
Outrageous.
Do not carry a backpack that you're not strong enough to carry yourself. And what an honor is me to carry my own Bible and open up my own water.
Yeah.
And I understand it comes from a place. I was a pastor's assistant for years. That was my job to do so. But when it came to local, I realized, let's switch it up.
Yeah.
God really placed it in my heart. He says, man, you've been on staff at a church since you were 18 years old. Just go to work.
Yeah.
Just go to work.
Yeah.
But yeah.
I love that. I think it, and I just want to shout out our head pastor, Pastor Miles McPherson.
Yes, he's
because
the
he is somebody who does this so well. He is literally, like, I will see him. I was at Choose Fitness, and I'm running on the treadmill, and this dude pops up on the screen. And everywhere you look, he has so much influence. He's connected to so many people, and he walks with so much humility. And I think if anything that I get from being around him, it's that. And I think I get that from being around you as well.
And I'll say this about Pastor Miles. I know he listens to the pod. I know he is.
He's going to be on the pod.
We don't have a name for the tribe. I'm not going to say he's a sinner, a saved sinner, but Pastor Miles is amazing.
Sinner.
He had a conversation with me, and we were in his car, and he said, "Hey, if I could just wave a wand, magic wand, and make anything happen for you, what would that be?" And I'm just like, "Oh my God!" Right? Like LEDs. No, I was. and honestly, what I felt in my heart, and I said, "This is it. It's the fact that you're being who you are.
Yeah.
Man, you take notice." And about 2 years into the church. Again, you know, church planner, our stage was built out of plywood for the first 2 years of our church. And finally, one day, I was just like stuck. And I'm just like, man, we've gone through so much plywood the first 2 years. And I texted Pastor Miles. Pastor Miles, we're going to buy a stage. But by any chance, you got one in the storage that we could buy off of you? And at least I want to be a better steward. And he's like, show up to the warehouse. And there's this warehouse. It's like a church planter's dream. And I walked in, and the gentleman that was on staff, he says, just pick whatever you want and take it. And for me, that was huge. So the stage.
That's crazy. I didn't even know that.
The stage that we preach on, our stage, it was the Rocks.
Wow.
Sure, it's one of those mobiles, but like, what an amazing thing. And he never did it public. He didn't make me do a video. Hey, just tell everybody that the Rock. No, man. The Rock's heart and Pastor Miles' heart is so humble that we'll do in private what a lot of people try to do in public. And that's why he's so blessed. The church is so blessed. And that's a model for us to follow.
Wow.
To just serve when nobody's watching.
Amen.
So good. That's so good.
Amen.
Well, to wrap up, man, we just want to say thank you. I was just like this, just wow. Just I didn't even have anything else to say. But yeah, what an honor it is to hear the wisdom that you have, that what God has done in your life, and for you to display it with us is amazing. Is there anything that you want to tell the people?
I just want to tell the people to read their Bibles.
Don't sin.
No, I just want to say to you guys, thank you. Thank you for being here, for coming to our space.
Glad.
I'm a fan of the pod. I want to tell everybody to like and subscribe.
Yes.
Do the whole thing. Do the shout outs.
Yeah.
And I'm excited because I'm going to get to brag in a few years that I was there in like the beginning seasons. But we love you guys. Lee and I, we love you guys. And we're excited for everything that God's going to do through this.
Thank you. Well, don't forget to like and subscribe on the Save Sinners podcast. We will see you guys on the next one. Love you guys.
Real quick, are we still going? Okay, we're going to end here.
Oh, my.
End here. If you are watching this podcast and you have listened to Pastor Abe, you have listened to Lee, and you feel like you connected with them, and maybe you're not a Christian, maybe you've never been to church, we want to encourage you to check out their church. It's local church in downtown San Diego. We have, what time are the services?
10 a.m.
10 a.m. service. If you feel like you connected with him and Lee, check it out. It's an amazing church that does things in a very creative way, and they glorify God. So, hey, we love you. Have a great
you guys.
week.